I'm afraid I have some bad news. A lot of car companies are butchering a lot of cool car models for 2024, and two of them are what I consider to be Audi's best models in history, and that is the Audi R8 and the Audi TT. When the Audi R8 came out as a concept, the Le Mans concept, it blew my mind. It had this blade on the side, this light blue color, and it was a car that was the first production car, the first R8, that had the LEDs in the headlights, which is today a normal thing in pretty much every single car company. What's so fascinating about that concept is just how close the production R8 looked to the initial Le Mans concept. So what we're gonna do in this video is I wanna show you the generation of the Audi R8. There's only two generations, there's three generations of the Audi TT. Compare them in Photoshop from a side view so you can see the differences and what I appreciate about these two models. But before we do that, we're gonna have to have a look at this very sad article from Car and Driver. These vehicles are dead for 2024. If you wanna check this article out, of course, I'm going to link it down in the description. The Dodge Charger, the Challenger, even the Camaro is gone for 2024. You have the R8, as we talked about, the Kia Stinger. Kia's fantastic sporty hatchback is no more because it just didn't sell in that many numbers, unfortunately. I did a review on that and I thought it was a great car. It drives like a sports car, it sounds great, it does have the punch when you floor it. And then we have the Audi TT and the TTS also dead for 2024, which is a shame. The Audi TT, same as the Audi Le Mans concept, it was just one of these cars that when you saw it, it was something completely different from anything else you've seen from the brand before. It had this almost architectural shape, Bauhaus design to it, and if you were to put a center line in, which I'm gonna do in Photoshop, right in the middle of the car, the front and the rear almost look exactly the same, which should mean that it's a pretty static looking design, but for some reason, Audi designers managed to make this into a very dynamic and cool looking design, specifically from a side rim, specifically the first generation. So the fourth and final generation TT is underpinned by Volkswagen's group MQB platform, pretty much a prettier Volkswagen Golf, and it's very sad that this is dead for 2024. I think it's a fantastic car. I made a bunch of reviews on these as well. I love every single generation. Then we have the Audi R8 Coupe and Convertible, also gone for 2024. The luxury brands also calls it quits on the R8. It first entered production in 2008, then he got a facelift in, I do believe, in 2011 or 2012. My personal favorite R8 of all time has to be the V10 Plus with the manual transmission, the facelifted version in blue or in red. Just a fantastic car altogether. And the prices for those are pretty much the same with the newer generation Audi R8. That's how good of a car that was. Then we have a couple of other cars here. I'm just gonna go through them quickly before we jump into Photoshop. The Bolt EV, the most affordable electric vehicle of 2023, calls it quits. I actually think this is a fantastic looking little car. It has a cool design, very stylistic, and this is nowhere near the bubbly. Maybe it's a little bit bubbly in the proportions, but the styling itself, the details look pretty chiseled here. Another gorgeous, legendary car is a Chrysler 300. It still has this classic, old school, traditional sedan proportions. Feels like it's representing Detroit in a very cool way. So they let this one go with a special edition with a 485 horsepower, 6.4 liter V8 under the hood, and I still think this is one of the best looking sedans on sale today. I don't mind the interior. I don't mind that we still have analog gauge clusters, for example, in the 300C. I think that actually adds to the classy feel and vibe of cars today, since everybody else goes into digital. But unfortunately, this one is dead as well, and we talked about the Charger, unfortunately also dead. A bunch of muscle cars. This is a huge deal for me. The Dodge Challenger came out in 2007. So it's basically been the exact same since 2007 in the design. They just updated the headlight, made them LEDs, the taillights also made them LEDs. They came out with this wide body kit. But other than that, this is a clear example of when you have a timeless design, this being based on the 60s and 70s muscle cars. When you have a design like this, you don't necessarily need to refresh it because it's a design that's been proven to stand the test of time. And I think the Challenger has done that as well. And it's still outselling the Mustang and the Camaro, at least in 2022 and 2023, even though the design has been out since 2007. I mean, how cool is that, and a testament to how good of a design this is. The F8 Tributo is no more, and that I don't really mind that because I think this is one of the least attractive Ferraris dropped in the last, I don't know, 50 years. I'm not a fan of the F8 Tributo. I made a video on this a while back explaining exactly why I think this is not a good design. It feels like a crashed Ferrari 458. It's based on the 458. The 488 was also based on the 458. And for every step they took away from the 458, they removed some of this elegance that the original 458 had. And this is the peak of over-styling when it comes to the adding more and more styling onto the body of the 458. So this one is gone for 2024 as well. Fiat 500X, don't really care about this. Ford Transit Connect also gone. And then the Jeep Cherokee is gone for 2024, which is pretty surprising. The Renegade as well. It's a cool little car, this Renegade. I do like the design. It looks rugged, but I'm not sure how, much of a Jeep soul it actually has underneath the hood. Kia Rio is gone, and we also talked about the Kia Stinger. Sad day for Kia fans because I think this was a fantastic machine. You can go check out the full review of this I did on the Sketch Monkey channel if you want to. Mazda CX-9 is gone. The Mazda MX-30, this was a complete failure. It was a full EV with a range of about 100 miles and a base price of $35,000. I'm not sure how they thought they were gonna be able to sell that. I wouldn't call this gone. It's not really gone for 2024 because we have the 750S, which essentially looks exactly the same. The only difference in the front end basically is that this piece black down here is now body color. C-Class and E-Class convertible both gone. They were being replaced by the gorgeous CLE, specifically in the AMG trim. Fantastic looking machine, although I do think this C-Class Coupe was one of the best looking Mercedes in the last 20 years. We have the CLS being gone as well because we do have the GT 4-door, which I do like a lot better. And I think that's about it. Also, yes, the Porsche Panamera Sport Turismo, unfortunately. The wagon performance Porsche, I'm glad that they were brave enough to do this experiment and put this into production because I think it's such a cool design, but unfortunately not a lot of people were buying this. With that said, let's jump into Photoshop here and let's have a look at the generation of the Audi TT and the Audi R8. Two fantastic models by Audi. As I said, it's really sad to see these go because they are such legendary models to me. So on the right side, we do have the Audi TT, as you can see right here. 3 generations in total, and I think they stayed true to the original design of the Audi TT, because have a look at this. As I said, if we put a section line right here, right in the middle, it looks almost like the front end is the same, it's a symmetrical design, which means that in a way, it should feel like a pretty static looking design. But I think what helps it here is that the roofline now goes back, of course, a little bit longer. In the B pillar right here ends in a further back way than we have the A pillar ending in front of the front axle this distance, and then you have this B pillar down here almost right above the rear axle, so it creates a little bit of a motion forward for this design. I love how the graphics sits flush with the body, and this is something we never seen before the Audi TT. We don't have even a bumper in the front or in the rear. Everything is smooth and everything fits together nicely. This is one of these cars that every single graphic detail feels like it is uniquely designed for the Audi TT. We have these big wheel arches here as well, looking great. It's just overall a fantastic looking car with these multi-spoke wheels. Second generation down here, Audi TT RS. You can see the changes here, a little bit more of a sportier design, a little bit more chiseled as well. We still have the big wheel arches going around here, and now we have this line, which is I think the biggest change in the side view, is that we have this upswing of the line in the side view, creating more of a forward motion. And you also have the B pillar now stretching even further back to again create more of a less symmetrical design. If we put a mid section right there, you can now more clearly see what is the front end and what is the rear. But we still have the same feeling of the graphics. They sit in this corner or in this curve. That if you draw a curve here from the shoulder line and then dipping down like this, you can see how it just cuts off the taillight and the headlight in a very cool way. Specifically, this is unique for the Audi TT. Again, love the wheels of these TT RS, looks fantastic. You also have a big wing back here on the TT RS. This is then the last generation Audi TT RS in this case, and I think it's such a cool looking car. I mean, just look at the short wheelbase, how much fun this is to drive. You have all-wheel drive, you still have a very sharp and chiseled shoulder line here. You have the same line that we have in the second generation down here at the bottom. We now have a little bit more styling features in the front end, creating more of this aggressive look, specifically for the TT RS. These wheels, again, fantastic looking wheels. They look bigger than what they are, and I think that has to do a lot with the wheel arches that goes around these wheels as well. One of the masterpieces from Audi has always been the TT. Doesn't matter what generation you look at. And then again, of course, you do have the RS wing at the very back. Now, coming over to the Audi R8. So up here, we do have the beautiful, mind-blowing Le Mans concept. And as I said, when this came out, no one thought that Audi was actually going to be able to put this into production. The big thing here was this big blade that we have right here. The typical R8 blade. You can have this in carbon fiber if you want to. You can have it in a different color than the rest of the car. And it just was one of these design features that made it the R8 special. But what it did also, it kind of worked a little bit with the proportions, because now it feels like if we just make a cut here, it feels like this car, you can see now when I sketch out the cut, it feels like it's clashing with the rest of the front. It feels almost like this front piece is now being pushed out or born out of this rear piece. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but it feels like two different cars. But it also made the Audi R8 unique, because we still have a connection between these two pieces, and that is in this shoulder line. And the reason why Audi made this shoulder line like this, with two curvatures above the rear axle and one curvature right here on the shoulder line above the front axle, is that this was at the time Audi's way of showing that this is an all-wheel drive. They did this with every single Quattro model. Instead of having a sharp line, they just made two dips above the rear and the front axle. Pretty cool. This being a mid-engine car, you have this big intake, air funneling in right here into this big vent. And look at how close they actually came from the concept car when they went into production. It's just a fantastic transition, specifically in 2008, when we saw all these crazy concept cars, and everybody knew this is never going to be put into production. And the Le Mans concept was one of these cars, but they actually managed to make it a production car. And this is an absolutely stunning design, even to today. I definitely prefer this generation of the Audi R8, the first generation, over the second generation, because here we have more of an exotic, fluid, almost Italian style with this design, and in the new one it looks way too chiseled in my opinion. And there's one detail I'm going to show you down here that I have a bit of a problem with when it comes to the graphics of the new one. Wheels, these look to be the V10 wheels. Actually, it does say V10 here on the fender. One of the best Audis of all time, if not the best Audi of all time, combining both the technology in the car and also the design. Now, looking at the last generation Audi R8 that is today, you can see that it got a lot more chiseled and a little bit more static. What this reminds me of is a Noble, and I'm not a huge fan of the Noble car because it doesn't have an identity to it, and I think the identity was lost a little bit here in this generation Audi R8. But the biggest problem I have with this are these two Noble lines. It's very similar to the Noble supercar that goes right here. So they dip downwards. You can see this intake goes down and then it goes up, creating a funnel that kind of shrinks the shoulder. So it creates this big mass up top that makes it feel a little, I don't know, it just doesn't look as good as having a straight shoulder line like we had in the previous generation R8. It's not a bad looking design, but the other reason why I prefer the first generation R8 is you can see that the blade now is not intact. We don't have the blade cutting through the entire body. Instead, we have this section of body color separating two blades. So we have one blade up top, and then the second big blade being down here at the bottom. Wheels look fantastic. I love this little subtle ducktail in the rear end, and the rear end graphics of the new R8 also is a perfect modernization or upgrade from the first generation. However, the front end, that's where they lost most of this fluid feel, organic feel of the first generation, and made it more Lamborghini-esque in the front end with all of these angles that we have. That is another reason why I prefer the clean situation that we have in the graphics in the first generation R8. I'm not sure where Audi is going to go with these two models from here. I really hope that they're not just gonna make both of these into EVs. That would just completely ruin the legacy of these models. The R8 is not supposed to be an electric car. If you want to make it electric, make it a hybrid. Put in a V6 even, it doesn't matter, and make it and turn it into a two electric motors in the front and rear axle and have it be 800 horsepower or something like that. That would be my preferred way of moving forward with the Audi R8. I don't want them to ditch either of these models, but unfortunately these are just the times we live in today.